first of all, Mr. Tan, about your own country. Is the miracle of Singapore over the past 50 years be repeatable for the near future of your country? What do you think about the circumstances then, how it has changed so far?
There is no reason why Singapore cannot continue to maintain its success. I think success will be harder to come by, but we are in a much better position than we were, say, 50 years ago. The population is much better educated. Our finances are in a much better state, and I think we draw confidence from the past, and so this year marks the start of a new chapter. I think it'll be a more challenging chapter, but as I said, there's no reason why we can't continue to do well.
That's right. Well, Mr. Wang, a question probably to your heart. Mr. Lee Kuan Yew, who passed away, and certainly many of us missed him for his strategies and the masterminds, has been the face, the image, the spirit, and the brain, some are even argue, of Singapore. With that great man passed away, is there anyone going to be able to, in that position, and encourage the whole nation to seek a better future?
Well, there's never going to be another Lee Kuan Yew. I think that Lee Kuan Yew in the annals of leadership in the 20th century was unique, and it's hard to imagine. I mean, when you think about leaders who have had an impact on their nation, it's hard to think, I'm hard-pressed to think of a leader other than Lee Kuan Yew who had such a great impact on the development and evolution of his country. So, will there be another Lee Kuan Yew? I don't think so. But are there lessons that Lee Kuan Yew's successors can take? Pragmatism. Being analytical and rigorous and objective in developing policy prescriptions. I think that those lessons certainly can be learned from Lee Kuan Yew and should be emulated for Singapore to continue succeeding in the half-century ahead.
Well, Mr. Gao, China has been a long-time observer, at least, of Singapore, because many of the population are actually coming from China regionally. Secondly, China's reform and opening up process. A lot of inspirations, China was getting it from Singapore. Thirdly, the last generation of leaders, Chinese Deng Xiaoping and also the Singaporean Lee Kuan Yew, they are great friends in terms of comparing notes and also work together in the Asia-Pacific region. But what is China's observer, at least from your perspective, what is China's understanding of Singapore's current challenges?
Well, first of all, please allow me to congratulate Singapore on the 50th anniversary of the founding of the Republic. I don't think we can see any other example of such vast and rapid transformation of the economy.
Complimentary words aside, let's go to the questions.
Etc. So it's a happy day for the Singaporeans. But I would say from the Chinese perspective, when Deng Xiaoping visited Singapore at the end of the 1970s, he really drew inspiration from the miracles already, by that time, already being achieved by Singapore. And Deng Xiaoping told Lee Kuan Yew during his visit to Singapore that if the Singaporeans could do that, we on mainland China can also do that. And I think even though the circumstances of Singapore and China are very different, China also managed to achieve great economic and political transformation over the past 37 years. And I would say that a lot of the lessons that we have learned from the Singaporean case contributed to this vast and rapid transformation. In this sense, I think we in China are very grateful for the lessons that we have learned from Singapore.
Challenges ahead?
Challenges,
very
I would
briefly,
say.
if you can.
Yeah, I would say that I agree with the other panelists. There will be no more Lee Kuan Yew in Singapore, but I hope the collective leadership, integrating the brains of a couple of dozens of leaders in Singapore will contribute to making sure that the inspirations from Lee Kuan Yew can be continued in the future and the development in Singapore can be sustainable.
I can see the three of you are all very polite and diplomatic. Maybe that's a great way to open the conversation, but not going exactly to the next stage. So let me be specific here, gentlemen, if I can. People's Action Party is the ruling party for now, and it has been winning its election since 1950s, late of it. And it is no question that it is likely to win the election again, and yet there are increasing percentage of opposition politically. in terms of development of opposition parties or different opinions coming from the general society. Mr. Wine, what do you think about the diversity of the political scenes in Singapore that we've already seen some signs, particularly during the last election, is likely to influence the direction of this country? Is it likely to bog down the rapid development path of this city-state?
Well, if you look at actually the numbers, I think that the latest numbers that I saw are that approximately a third of the seats are going to be contested in this election next month. And I think that in some sense, the question of whether it will bog down Singapore's economic growth is almost a moot point. I think that this is an important greater electoral competition. It's an important part of Singapore's evolution. And it's one that a burgeoning middle class in Singapore is demanding. I think that if you ask a typical Singaporean today, while very grateful for the actions of the PAP and grateful for the leadership of Lee Kuan Yew, is no longer worried about existential challenges that the PAP was wrestling with. They're worried about greater spending on social services, stemming the influx of immigrants, changing Singapore's demographic prospects. And so I think that a greater middle class in Singapore wants more voices, they want more electoral competition. And I think that my own intuition is that I think that the PAP will do very well in the elections next month. But I don't think that I think that their share will probably continue to decline. I think that voters want greater choices, and I think that they'll get them, even if the PAP still wins heartily next month.
We do see a trend, Professor Tan, of Singaporeans continuously paying much more attention than they used to be to the domestic issues. In other words, it is very unlikely any external issues that's likely to unite the Singaporeans together now. Is the ruling party lack of one tool to win more hearts and minds as a result because of the development of your economy, because of the ever-rising role of your country in the region?
No, I agree with Mr. Win. I mean, things are developing very rapidly, and I think there is a demand for greater political contestation, more political diversity as well. And I think in many ways, they have, Singaporeans have imbibed, the PAP's mantra of good governance, and for them it's, well, you can't achieve good governance, if there's only one party pretty much in control of most things, So I think there is a sense that we need to have a backup, and that we want to see greater diversity of political views. We want to see the government being more responsive. So we were likely to see all the seats being contested, in the next general election, which many believe, will be held next month. And I think the PAP will continue to govern Singapore. The only question remains, is how significant the victory margin will be.
Right.
But I think there is no stop. The genie is out of the bottle. I think, Singaporeans do desire greater political freedoms, and I think we see the government trying to respond to that. And so the question is whether, the government is responding fast enough, and whether Singaporeans, are prepared to give the opposition parties a try.